A.C.E.S Junkyard Podcast, telling pilots to remember their 3 R's: refit, reload, and rehydrate.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Podcast, episode 49, your number one voted MWM Battletech podcast, coming to you live from SDF-1. Today is January 28th, 2017. Welcome to the new year, everybody. I'm your host, Brandon, also known as Cattra, Kell. With me today is Tirkron. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. I'm glad to be back up and running. Had a little hiccup right before Christmas. My video card decided to buy the farm, and luckily it was still under warranty, so I could RMA it. But with the holiday hours of EVGA, they couldn't ship it out to me until like almost the second week of January. So
oh, geez, so you're just getting back up.
I was supposed to have it the 13th. I didn't get it till the 17th. So I've only been running back up and running now for about a week and a half. So I missed out on a lot of the Christmas holiday event stuff, which I was kind of disappointed about. So I've been, I got back, I had like 2-3 days worth of full play time before the patch dropped for January. So that was, some fun.
I was about to say, I've been currently without a computer for about a month and a half, and I finally found a laptop which will allow me to play MWO. And before anyone says, yes, I do realize a laptop is not good for gaming typically, but this is fine, at least until I can get a place where I can set up my desktop that's currently at my other house at the moment where I'm currently recording this. But yeah, so I should be becoming a little bit more active.
Yeah, I tried running it on the integrated graphics of my CPU. I had to chuck everything down to low settings. I had to adjust the screen resolution. By the time I was done, it felt like I was playing MechWarrior 3 or MechWarrior 4 again. It was very odd. It also made ranging shots very difficult. Trying to hit with Gauss and PPC was near impossible unless I was within like 400 to 500 meters, and that by that point it was like, it's really just not worth it. And if I was tried to play on a night that was busy, the connection would just tank and everything just started getting choppy. So I was like, oh man, I just need that. The game's been optimized so much for newer hardware that the old hardware just doesn't seem to work with it any longer. So I was like, I've got to hold out now and wait for that graphics card.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to find a laptop with a 980 4GB card in it, so it's performing pretty well. When I'm pulling highest settings on a laptop for, I guess Overwatch isn't like that high stress of a game, but I'm pulling still like 200 FPS in it, like on a laptop. That's pretty all right.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing before we hop into topics, I do have a sponsor somewhat that I'm going to shill for. Basically, myself and a friend have started one of those really self-loathing meme pages on Facebook, and I'm going to shill for them, and you're going to sit there and you're going to like it. So if people like Battletech and all things Battletech, and you want to have a laugh and or just see cool art and whatever, make sure you check out Grayson Carl's Lost Tech Meme Cache on Facebook. So that's all I got, and I paid myself to say this, so it is an actual official sponsorship. So let's hop into the news. It's been what, about, oh Jesus, probably about a month and a half,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. We got
We
in
went
right at the beginning
for,
of December, and
yeah. So of course with Christmas and everything like that, not a whole lot of info.
Yeah.
But this past, what I would say, 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
We got quite a bit. The first thing I want to talk about is probably the Javelin, the new light mech that everyone is
Yes.
so very hype about. Of course, this is the first light mech in a while.
It's been almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
Someone actually did the math, counted back to the last light mech that was added to the game was the Jenner 2C, and that didn't come out until, I think it was August 25th. It was either late summer or early fall of 2015. So was almost a full year and a half since a new light mech got added to the game. Or was scheduled to be added to the game.
Yes, was scheduled, because there's always that phantom flea somewhere out there.
That was announced. I don't know if we
can
really hold out hope for that one.
They're just scared it's going to be OP. It's going to be Kodiak 2.0 all over again. But yeah, the Javelin. Right off the bat, I want to congratulate PGI on one thing right off the bat, and that is the price point. I think the drop in price, for people who don't know, sorry, I should reiterate, the standard pack with the 3 mechs is currently $15, and the collector's pack is $30. And for people who perhaps are not in the know too much, before this, your standard pack was $20 and $40 respectively. So you got about a $5 price drop on the standard pack, and $10 price on the collectors. And I think this is very good because it's a light mech, and 2, I believe they have said they are going to be shifting towards a new way that they're doing.
It sounded almost like they're going back to the mech packs, the way they used to be.
But I wonder, and I don't have any insight knowledge on this, unfortunately, but I wonder if they're going to go more of an individual mech, but an a la carte version where each variant adds to your price.
Maybe. We also know because February, if you were paying attention to the announcements in December at MechCon, we know in February we're going to be getting the revamped skill tree, which means you don't have to have a minimum of 3 variants of a mech in order to, master something or elite something out. You can just do it with one. So that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to go searching for, okay, I've got this variant, what other 2 are actually workable with my play style or with the meta. So for mech packs, that makes it a lot easier. You could put in a larger variety of mechs and not have to worry about supplying extra variants for it. If you think back to the Clan Invasion pack, without the extra 2 variants for each mech, you could have seen that pack, with just the regular prime chassis, and you could have probably gotten it for a lot cheaper. And that could be, what they're aiming for with these, this new mech pack, that they're floating around is going to be coming after the Javelin releases. On the price point for the Javelin, it's also important to note that the standard pack's $15 with the hero and the reinforcements add-on. That's only an extra 20. I mean, it's for everything. It's $35. That's pretty decent for 6 mechs, and if you do the early adopter awards, getting 6.5 million C-bills in game currency. Some premium time is, I believe, also going to be thrown in there. So it's more in line with what mech packs seem to used to be for pricing and for their the price to reward ratio, it seems to be getting a bit more favorable and back to where it was. So I do have to applaud them for that.
Yes, and again, the price point was a thing that we talked about for probably a little while now. So at least knowing that PGI is considering price fluctuations, perhaps simply based on the tonnage alone, is, I think, a good thing. But
oh, and to clarify with the premium time is not active premium time; it's banked premium time, which is a big thing for people who might want to purchase this, but know that they're not going to be around in May to play. They have work, or they have school, or they have something else going on in their life that they know they're going to have to take off for a little while. Banked premium time, you don't have to activate it right away. You can just go back into your forum profile and activate it 30 days at a time from there, or you can just activate it all from your in-game account. So
yes,
makes a difference.
Premium time is very much a very good thing, because you can even cut it up into how much time you need as well.
I believe it's a 30-day minimum.
Yes, but
I don't
if
believe
you
you
get
can
a whole bunch
activate
of it collected,
Yeah.
you don't hit activate and then it all disappears.
Yeah.
Type of
Like
thing.
I think I've got just a little bit over a year of banked premium time left that I've only been activating, every other month when I know I'm going to be around to play a lot. So December I didn't have it activated, and thankfully I didn't, or else that would have been a big loss for me.
Yeah. But let's actually talk about the Javelin a little bit. I don't want to go over every single variant because, like we have in the past, because that takes up quite a bit of time and really doesn't save
And
much.
a number of the variants are incredibly similar to one another.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I felt like we were repeating each other quite a bit.
Yeah.
But overall, looking at the variants we have here now, is there a single one that stands out to you? And do you think that there's going to be like a general feel or a general like purpose for the Javelin in MWO?
The one that stands out the most to me is the 11B, which is the ECM capable version. It comes in the reinforcements pack, I believe. Yes. Uh, it's two missile in each side torso and an ECM pod. Uh, it's got a single AMS, but on a light mech you usually don't take AMS. You use your speed and maneuverability to avoid missiles. But right there with the Guardian ECM, it's doesn't have a lot of upgrades, so you can do Endo and an XL engine in there and make it a hard hitting SRM, light SRM bomber skirmisher kind of thing. And I do kind of see a role for the Jenner. If you haven't picked up something like the Hero Raven, the Hugin, the Javelin's going to take that place as a light mech for your inner sphere deck. A lot of the variants are all SRM heavy, usually SRM 6s, but you can easily switch out those for SRM 4s for faster firing, add Artemis for better grouping, and the Javelin's going to do that. It's going to be running, it's going to be jumping, it will move, and I can see it, finding a place in your light lances next to, wolfhounds and fire starters, being there to rip armor open and expose criticals for lasers to easily hit.
I agree. I think one of the, let me just pop in here just for a second. The one that I'm mainly interested in is either the 10F or 11A, and basically these are the energy variants.
Yeah, they're referred to in the canon as the fire javelin variants because they skew their missile hard points for energy hard points.
Yes, so. And with the ability to put in a good number of jump jets, I think you're going to see a couple, like, looking at how the meta is somewhat right now. PPC in the left torso and like 2 mediums in the right torso, or some sort of setup like that, and it's going to be kind of like a pop-up. It's basically going to be a pop-up Panther.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that.
Yeah, and that's something also going to be interesting with the Javelin because the most of the weapons on each variant are in either side torso, and the side torso hard points seem to be, you know, relatively high on the chest. I won't go as far to say high mount because they aren't shoulder height necessarily, but they're about mid chest level. So a PPC or ER large lasers, yeah, you're probably going to be able to snipe, pop and snipe and dodge with this mech pretty well. Um, so it's going to have that advantage going for it over, things like the Wolfhound and the Panther.
Let's also like keep in mind you're going to be able to put a pretty big engine. Well, it's got a max engine on those variants. The 10F is the one I think is going to stand out the
Yes.
most because it can put in a 285 compared
Yes.
to a 255. And even at a 180 standard, it's still doing 97. But if you compare it to the other like 30-ton mechs, you could put in like even a 250 or a 275. Like you're going to be doing a pretty good click.
You're going to be bucking.
Yeah, so like I said, it's almost like with the Panther, you put, except for the Panther's issue is that you get the PPC in the arm, which just gets ripped right off. With it in the side torso, you're correct. It's got a little bit more protection. It's going to be fine, and with the combination of its speed and its jump jets, I think you're going to see a very viable Pop-Tart. As far as a light hit and run striker harasser type mech.
The other variant that's really interesting is actually the Hero, High there, which is actually a canon hero. It's most people don't realize it actually does appear in canon. It's in, I can't remember which source book or technical readout it's in, but it is there. The That one's interesting because it's got two medium lasers in each arm and and an SRM-6 in each side torso. So that right there, I could see this mech being a nasty little infighter, similar to the way the Mistlinks and the Arctic Cheetah work for the clans. Um, that said, it doesn't have a lot of weight savings to gain because it is running an XL and has endo steel and double heat sinks already. But I know that there are pilots out there and players out there that will find it, probably dropping the medium lasers down to smalls, dropping the SRM-6s down to probably SRM-4s, probably getting rid of a couple of jump jets, maybe only running with 2 jump jets or 1 jump jet, depending on their play style. Uh, I could see this, and then switching in ferrofibrous if they've got the crit space for it. That mech, I think, could do some real interesting work on the play field. The only thing I'm worried about with it is uh, basically how the hit boxes are going to be on the Javelin. If the Javelin is the same size as the Panther and the Wolfhound and has somewhat large hit boxes for a light mech, it could suffer a bit for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good.
Because
Good point.
and we've mentioned it before. I'm not a fan of the way Intersphere light mechs were increased in size. I feel that it's put them at a severe disadvantage.
It very much is because they become bigger, bulkier, and easier targets, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that's a proper reflection of what they are. I think they should be a little bit smaller. Um, I mean, this for the bulk that increases between comparing the Wolfhound and the Panther to the Arctic Cheetah. Yeah, the Wolfhound and Panther are 5 tons more, but that the extra bulk that they grab for just 5 more tons seems to be out of proportion. And now with the Javelin being only 30 tons instead of 35 may not have that issue, but it's still something I'm a bit wary of.
That's true. And I wonder, and this is just me perhaps reading too much into things, but I wonder if some mechs that we're seeing being released here in MWO have a tie to what they might like to see in the Battletech game, since they're
Yes.
using the models from that.
Yes.
I wonder if that has something to do with it as well, or at least with mechs we might see in the future.
And I think there might also be a link to MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, which was announced at MechCon. Them using MWO right now basically as a test bed for in-game modeling of mechs that they know they want to use in that game. They can try them out here in MWO and fine-tune them here before porting them over or recreating them for MechWarrior 5. I know one of the big things about the Javelin that I've been hearing from a lot of people are, why the Javelin instead of something, one of the older
Yeah, where's
mechs
my
like the
dervish?
Wasp or the Stinger or the Valkyrie, which are all original lights to the BattleTech
And
tabletop.
especially now where we know that Catalyst and all them
Yeah.
are using those designs, especially with things like the Warhammer and Rifleman making comebacks in their original glory, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and my response to that is I think the reason we're not seeing them is because of the variance issue. The Stinger, the Wasp, and the Valkyrie, they really don't have a lot that you can do with them to make unique variants across, to make, 6 different variants to put into a mech pack. So I'm wondering if we're not going to see them released in the future mech packs where they're not going to have to worry about having as many variants. They can release, the stock variant that was used, at the fall of the Star League and through the Succession Wars, and they can also include, one or two, one variant that's the upgraded, clan invasion, lost tech recovered, variant. You know, it's something to think about. But I'm I'm leaning towards that might be what the case is. PGI is just trying to save themselves a little bit of a headache, or, when it comes to packaging and deciding what variants go where.
Yeah, and not only that, I think you're missing the key difference of why they're not putting those mechs in, and it's the hand cannon bias.
I don't think that's the issue because we know that if you look at the really old art, the Wolverine's supposed to have a hand cannon, the
But it doesn't.
Battlemaster's
It
supposed to
doesn't. You
have.
see, it's
Yeah.
all like PGI is by they're
Well, not just
mechist
PGI, Catalyst is,
and Catalyst. They're
in all the
mechist.
new art they've revamped it. So so I don't think that's anything at all to do with it.
They're mechist against mechs that can grip things with hands. There we go.
Yeah,
They're mechist. There we go.
yeah.
We'll make hands great again. That's what we'll do.
But who knows? I'm
But yeah, I think
it's
there's. I really don't think there's. Because let's be honest, aside from a few key mechs, as far as light mechs go, there really isn't any that stand out that we don't already have in the game. When you talk light mechs to anybody who's played any previous MechWarrior games, who's played or maybe not tabletop, because there are a few standout ones. But if you're locking it into this kind of like time area, I mean, you got the Wolfhound, which was a big thing in both the lore and everything like that. You get the Raven, which was a big thing. And then from there you got like the clan mix. You got the actually no, sorry, we don't have the Cougar, but that's like 3068, 3072, something like that.
no, it's early. It's 3058.
Oh, then we might
Yeah,
be getting it
the Cougar comes out of the refusal war between the Falcons and the Wolves. The Falcons need something to help them rebuild their talent after getting
yes,
smacked around like little pansies
yes,
that they
it
are.
comes out of the F-35 project. Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
But there are other light mechs.
but no big
Yeah.
ones, right? Like we've already
The
pulled
Hermes
most of the.
2.
I guess the
I'm sorry, the
Hermes.
Hermes. But the
Yeah,
Hermes 2 is actually a
I guess the
tech.
Hollander as well. Like yeah, but
Hollander doesn't
that's a
show up
one
until
meme mech.
3060.
That's a one function meme mech. But
Yeah.
everyone loves it.
Yeah, 3054 for the Hollander. You, you have a couple here and there, but yeah, we've kind of covered the big ones. The Mercury is there, but again, the Mercury doesn't have a lot of variants, so that's a lot of work to try to come up with new new configurations and variants that aren't repeats of one another.
But again, we don't need many variants anymore.
Yeah.
We can just have 2 put in the game now because we don't need
Yeah,
that 3.
yeah, and I think that's what we're going to see now. When you don't have to worry about having as many variants just to make it viable so that it fits within your leveling system. You can include things like the Venom, the Mercury,
The Piranha.
yeah, the
If that doesn't have a big PGI logo as a hero
Mongoose.
mech, I'm going to be pissed.
You know, you can do other things with it, and I think that'll help. Um, Honestly, I was surprised with the Wolfhound that they included as many variants as they did, because
Well, I
really
mean,
a
it's
lot
all
of
the
those
same,
variants are
right?
all. Well, the
On
Wolfhound
4.
variants are all basically the same thing, except a
Well,
couple
that's what I
have
mean. Like,
more
I'm
hard
running the
points than the
same
other.
loadout on all
Yeah.
4 of my Wolfhounds. Just one performs it better, but when I was
Yeah.
leveling them up, I just threw the same thing on it.
And so that's an issue there that. But I can understand why they include the Wolfhound early, mainly because it's kind of nostalgic. It's it.
Well,
I won't so
it's very lore specific for this time.
yeah.
And speaking of time, let's transition. This is a very very smart transition. This is no
Sure it
seams at
is.
all transition. Speaking of time, how about that 3060 timeline?
Yeah, we did get the announcement from Rush that
I'm a
we are
professional.
that we're going to see a push forward this summer with the timeline to the 3060s. That there are going to be at least, I think he said, 4 new mechs from that timeline added to the game, 2 from the clans and 2 from the inner sphere. Of course, speculation is running rampant. Smart money is going to be on the Mad Cat 2C. I'm sorry, not the Mad Cat 2C, the Mad Cat 2, which is a 90 tonner. Basically, the Mad Cat Timberwolf, style, except at 90 tons and as an assault mech. It was very popular and introduced to the video game scene in MechWarrior 4, and it's kind of just grown from there with popularity. Couple people have suggested, others, but there's really no clear consensus one way or the other for the other 3. There are some that's, people can say, oh yeah, those kind of make sense, but there's, other than the Mad Cat 2, there's nothing that really jumps out and goes, yes, this is an iconic mech from that period of
Cougar.
time.
I'll bring that up again.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. The Cougar is one of my favorite mechs in all time because it's just very sleek. It's very flat. It's just one of my favorite light mechs. Out of BattleTech in general.
The other interesting thing with this announcement is that we are going to get new weapons. We're going to see the Inner Sphere getting their
heavy machine guns confirmed.
Stop it. We're going to see the Inner Sphere get their other ER lasers. We're going to see them get their other LBX autocannons, their other UAC autocannons. The question is, what else could possibly be there? I'm thinking the light Gauss rifle is going to show up. I don't know if the heavy Gauss rifle is going to show up. There's a possibility there that it could, especially if it's, we are going into a full 3060 time jump. One of the new mechs could be the Fafnir, which is a 100-ton inner sphere assault mech.
That's one of the things I'm excited to see is that sort of thing. Rotaries.
The rotaries. Rotary autocannons are questionable. Yeah, they're 3060s, but that's questionable if they're going to show up.
Yeah.
The real question for weapons, though, is on the clan side, because Russ did say that the clans are going to get some new weapons to play with, and the big 3060 weapons for them are heavy lasers.
I was about to say the heavy laser family.
Which, if you're not familiar with them from tabletop and from the lore, heavy lasers basically take the clan lasers and shrink the range down to almost the standard inner sphere equivalent, but the trade-off in range goes into damage, and they become incredibly powerful. But you do have a trade-off in that they are very, very hot. Heavy
Yes.
lasers have a very heavy, hard heat pool to them. Firing two heavy, large lasers, is basically the equivalent of firing almost four large lasers. It can be pretty nasty. So,
But
I've heard people, commenting about, if they do introduce heavy lasers, is that going to basically be a repeat of the meta as it is right now? You're just going to have a heavy, people basically configuring their mechs for a heavy, 60-point alpha strike that they can fire one or two times before having to pull back and, wait, 5-10 seconds. Should PGI be worrying more about fixing the constant alpha striking issue before introducing those type of weapons into the game?
it should also be
Yeah.
mentioned that the entire inclusion of the heavy clan lasers was a band-aid fix for issues they saw in the tabletop game as
Yeah.
well. And because of this, I think it'll probably be fine in MWO, because I think people will stick to the regular lasers over heavy lasers. And the reason I say that is basically, unless you're really limited on hard points, I still think mass dropping regular ones in will probably be better.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if they're going to necessarily, some of the players are going to want to trade off, the benefits of a large pulse laser for a heavy large laser. But then, it's all the way to the summer. A lot of things can happen, and we're just speculating right now of what's going to be included. The heavy lasers are not the only clan weapons that are introduced in that time period. The advanced tactical missile systems also introduced. However, because that involves ammo switching, much like how the LBX autocannons have ammo switching, and that's not in the game, and PGI's kind of made it clear that they're not going to include that. It's just too much of a headache to try to get the coding right on it. I don't know if ATMs are going to show up with a different ammo aspect to them. I could see them show up in, basically some capacity where there's different variants of it, so you aren't able to switch ammo in the middle of a game, but you could have, you could switch the launcher around so that it has a different functionality, so you can take a version that has, longer range if that's what you want to use it for, or you could take a variant that has heavier damage if that's what you want. It's something that we'll have to wait and see on.
Very much. And with this move as well, aside from weapon systems, there's also extra light engines for Inner Sphere.
We already have extra light.
Not extra.
Light
you know
fusion.
I mean. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the light engine. Which a lot of people, and this kind of goes to a couple other, things. People have been getting after PGI for balancing the game, basically to make Inner Sphere extra light engines, XL engines, like the clans. That it's too much of a disadvantage for the Inner Sphere to have extra light engines that get killed by just losing a single side torso. PGI has kind of said they really don't want to put make the Inner Sphere light XL engine the same as the clan XL engine. The light engine is a possible fix for that. It's not as light as the XL. It's only 75% of the standard engine weight rather than 50% like the XL is. But you get the survivability aspect. So that's a possibility. PGI just has to basically figure out how to put it in. But it's something I know we've talked about it previously about including the light engine. I know a lot of people in the forums are saying, why don't you just include the light engine? People will stop asking you to fix the Inner Sphere XL engine that doesn't need to be fixed. It's working as intended. So that's something we'll have to see what PGI has up their sleeve.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where this is going to be taking us. Because again, I think a number of things are coming together right now, and I think it's painting a pretty good future for MWO. And I'm just going to spill it all right here, real quick, just to get it out of the way. But removing of the 3 mech to allow for just single or even 2 variants to both be put in the game and be viable will really, in my opinion, I think allow for mechs to come out, not really come out more regularly, but like open up what mechs you can produce. On top of this, basically the move to 3060 allows for more variants to be open, like we already have with the Bushwhacker, for example. Yeah. But also, like, looking at some of those mechs as well, like I said, like the Cougar, stuff like that, stuff where there's only maybe like 2 variants, 3 variants that might be coming, or like 1 or 2 variants of something that might be coming out to be possible in the new system, which really opens up the like diversity of which you can release.
And, when we're saying, we'll just have to wait and see, we do know that in March we're going to get an announcement about what new technologies, what 4 new mechs will be, are going to be there. The pre-order for them is supposed to go up in March. So it's not like it's a ton of time away. We're on the cusp of February. You're basically going to have to wait maybe a month and a half. So, and February's not even a full month. So,
February is not even a real month. Let's be honest.
It's a real month.
It's a fake month. It's fake month.
All right. So we know things are going to be announced, and that they're not that far off. So people
and then again, not just weapon systems, but the other tech, like like you were saying, like the fusion engines for lights. And then I wonder if they're going to be adding any more I wonder if they're going to do anything for Triple Mariner. I wonder if that's going to present
I don't know about TSMs. I could see more mask being implemented for both sides. I could see Innersphere getting their version of the targeting computer, which basically is a slightly larger version of the clan targeting computer. I don't know about improved jump jets. That's kind of towards the tail end of 3060, early 3070s. I don't know necessarily if those will show up as new equipment for the game. I don't know if they're necessarily necessary for inclusion in MWO. But there are things that could start showing up. We could see the other types of armor. We could see light ferrofibrous for the Innersphere, heavy ferrofibrous for the Innersphere, the reactive and reflective armors for the Innersphere showing up, which, considering where the meta stands of people taking heavy amounts of lasers or heavy amounts of missiles, having reactive and reflective armor would actually make a difference. It would cut some of that damage down. That said, if you're in a reflective mech and you're suddenly up against mech that's out in autocannons, you're still in the same basket you were before.
Yeah, and I think that creates perhaps I play a lot, and this is going to be somewhat off topic, but I'm going to bring it back. Trust me. I play a game. I play a fantasy game called Fire Emblem, and in Fire Emblem, there is the quote-unquote weapons triangle, where it's basically rock, paper, scissors. Bringing this back now, if you add reactive and reflective armor as well as the normal armor, I think you could see a pretty interesting rock, paper, scissors type gameplay or something like that appear. Because if someone is boating lasers, or if people are boating lasers, and reflective armor decreases that, the damage you take from that, people are going to run reflective. But if reflective is weak against like autocannons or missiles, then people are going to start running those. You see what I mean? It's going to start creating kind of a rock paper system. You know what I mean? And I think that could be very interesting for the game.
Yeah. So moving on a little bit.
Okay.
Bushwhacker now.
I was going to say, let's just do patch notes, because the Bushwhacker would be included in that.
Yeah. So we're not. Let's not detail. We've already talked about variants for the Bushwhacker in a previous podcast. Uh,
Yes.
Initial impressions. I did not pick it up. So I haven't played it. I have talked to a lot of people though who did pick it up and are playing it. The overall consensus seems to be very favorable. There was a concern about how hitboxes would be on the Bushwhacker, especially with the arms, the way they are modeled, especially that right arm. But for the most part, it seems that the hitboxes, for those who are playing the Bushwhacker, they seem to really like it. They think that it's very fair and balanced, that the mech itself works really well. In a number of different variants and weapon loadouts. That said, I've heard people also on the other side who have been fighting bushwhackers who feel that the hitboxes on them are off slightly. Um, so when I'm hearing kind of an equal amount of both complaints and support, I tend to believe that a mech's kind of balanced. Uh,
Yes.
so I don't think that there's really any problems with the Bushwhacker. That said, I haven't done the secret science that meta players tend to do when testing a chassis out in all of its
I was gonna say a
glory.
pretty good. If
Yeah,
you want a good rundown on it, head over to No Guts No Galaxy. And I think G-Man has a big write-up
yeah,
on it already, just to see if it might be something for you. But I'm in the same boat here, Gron. I do not own the Bushwhacker yet. I'm gonna buy it. But my issue with it is the variance, and I don't know what I'm going to run on it. Basically, there's a lot of missiles, a lot of A.C.E.S. I think one or two are able to equip something like 4 energy. That's the most. It's a very well-rounded as far as variants go. Just it's basically I don't know what I want to run on it.
yeah.
The high roller hero mech, for example, like I don't know what to run on that. You got 3 energy in the left arm, you got 1 in the center torso, and then you got ballistics in the left torso, and then 2 on the right of it. Like it's
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah, I saw someone running a variant last night with I think 4 AC2s, which on a medium mech is kind of silly, but it worked. Except the person kept using advanced zoom when his target was only 300 meters away, which is pointless. Um, I'm sorry if you're trying to headshot like that, it's not going to work because that person's moving and shooting you, so you're never going to have the perfect lineup for it. You better off just going to regular zoom and just blazing away. Um, that said, I think it's kind of good when you've got mechs where people are left kind of scratching their head of like, I'm not certain what I want to run on this, because I think that lets you have a greater variance overall through the meta, because people aren't saying, "Oh, I have to run all large pulse. I have to run all medium pulse. I have to do
Hmm.
this. I have to do that in order to be effective in this mech." I like it more when people say, I can build it like this and be just as effective as someone who builds it like this and is effective. And I think I'm really hoping that with the skill system change up in February, that will make it more so along all of the different mechs and not just things like the Bushwhacker.
Yeah. Um. But yeah, as far as variants, like I'm probably gonna do one that's loaded with just AC5s because that's a pretty common. I mean, people have been doing that since the
The early days.
Cataphracт, yeah. So like AC5 stacking, AC10 stacking. Um, the P1 is nothing but pure missiles, so make an
Yeah.
SRM bomber. That's what I'm saying. Like it's so versatile that I don't know what I really want to do with them exactly. But I have ideas what I want to do with them. If that makes sense. Like there's nothing concrete. Like the P2 for example or even the high roller, I could just turn that, like the high roller with the 3 energy in the arm, I could turn that almost into like a Wubberine almost. Like I could put 3 large pulse lasers in that arm and just run an XL and that'd be it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Overall, I think you are right though. I think the Bushwhacker is a very good success in terms of a mech and where it kind of fits. It's not like broken but it's also not in broken in both ways, as in it's overpowered or that there's something wrong with the hitboxes. I think it's actually been a very good release, and I hope that mechs that come out continue on this trend of having a good release.
So next up on patch notes, we did see we got some new decals, but those are just the Bushwhacker, the ones that came with the Bushwhacker.
Yeah.
A couple of new cockpit items. Most of those are what came with the Bushwhacker. Teams that participated in the World Championships for MechWarrior Online got special little MechWarrior Online World Championship medals. Imperial got their gold version. Eon got silver, and 228s, the wild ones, got a bronze variant. Congratulations to all of those guys. That's something nice for them to have to commemorate.
That was also very fun to watch as well.
Yes, it was very fun to watch those matches. So thank you for entertaining us as well as you did. Two kind of odd little cockpit items that were added. First of all, a roll of duct tape, because who doesn't need a roll of duct tape?
It's pretty much the only thing that's keeping my Wolfhound together now.
Oh, your Wolfhound? I was saying that's what keeps most locusts together. But that's why locusts are so tanky, because they're armored with duct tape.
The duct tape's actually what's doing the tank.
And then there's a Hans Davian memento. I feel that's not appropriately named. I think it should have been the Steiner Davian wedding memento, because it's a crystal on a base, and it's got Hans Davian and Melissa Steiner Davian at their wedding dancing, and so but it's a nice little nod to the one of the biggest events in the timeline for the Succession Wars. So if you don't know what that refers to, I highly recommend picking up the Warrior Trilogy novels and reading them. They are a blast to read, and I do believe they are part of the BattleTech MechWarrior Legends set, so they are available through Catalyst, both as ebooks and as print versions, maybe.
Yes. So if you are missing out on books, make sure you do check out the EPUBs of the new releases, or alternatively, if you are very, very lucky, head down to your local used bookstores and go give a look around.
Yes.
That's how I think I picked up about 90% of my books.
Yeah.
Was just
and you can find them also on eBay and Amazon. You just have to be very discerning there, because depending on when they were, what version of the book it is, it could cost you $10 to $20, or it could cost you $50 to $60. Some of these original print novels are people ask a lot for them.
Yes. Your best bet though is just checking out just check out your local used bookstores.
Yes.
I was very fortunate where I lived in 2 university towns at the time, where I was looking for these, so my local used bookstore was just filled with them.
I've got all of them in print. Some of them I got back when they were sold at Barnes and Nobles. Others I got, from used bookstores. 2 or 3 I actually picked up at yard sales. I just happened to drive by and saw that they were selling books, and I stopped and leafed through them, and I found, I believe I Am Jade Falcon and DRT at some of those yard sales. So
was it the original cover DRT?
I don't think so. It's the one where the guy's being electrocuted and he's got the Speedo. And I don't believe that's the original art. The original art's something else.
That's the one I got. That's why I always consider the original art. Yeah. Anyways, back on topic. As far as the patches go, down in the gameplay section, I just want to bring this up first of all. The penalty for losing a side torso for Clan XL engines has been increased to 40% from 20%. And
for cooling efficiency,
yes.
Clarify.
I think this is very, very good. This is something that I've wanted for a long time, was to see more penalties applied to losing part of your engine for the clans. And when they first introduced the 20% penalty, I think, I'm not entirely sure if I said anything on here, but I know I've said stuff to you, Tierkron, in private, but I don't think that went far enough, because it really, most of the people use that side torso as a tank or a shield anyways, so you were not actually, the ones that they give up, they do not actually care if they lost, and that 20% is neglectable at that point because you still have all your firepower.
Right. So, it does put a penalty in there for if you, build it asymmetric and you are just using one side of your mech as a shield. There's going, it might not kill you, but you're going to feel, you're going to feel some pain for losing it. So it's something you have to put into your calculations now when you're fighting. We also saw a number of quirks getting shifted over. Majority of these were converting structure quirks to armor quirks. We also saw a couple, things here and there for weapon cooldowns and rate of fire getting changed. Couple mechs, had their quirks toned down a bit. The Shadow Cat being one. The Hunchback had its torso. The Hunchback 2C, I should clarify, had its torso yaw ability tuned down a lot more. Things basically trying to balance these mechs out. That people felt were overperforming in certain aspects, or just prepping them for what's going to come with the new changes in February. We know that quirks are going to become part of the unlockable for leveling mechs, and that's going to have some major impact on it. We don't know necessarily how armor and structure quirks are going to show up. It could just be the armor quirks are added here and there as needed to make mechs viable, but we don't know, and we're just gonna have to wait and see basically on that.
And then there is, of course, the last thing on the patch. I'm not 100% sure. Is this this can't be the first time they've included a direct link and the file.
They've been doing this the last 3 or 4 patches.
Okay, this is just the first time that I've noticed it, though.
No, we talked about it actually.
Did we?
On a couple, yeah. The first time they did it, we talked about it. That it's very handy for those who have slow connection speed that can't keep a continuous download going for a patch.
Yes,
it's easier for them
speaking
to
of patching,
download
let's transition to the new patcher portal. Something that was announced at the end of January, or I should say like Christmas Eve?
End of December, beginning of January.
January 24th. Just a couple days ago. Jesus Christ, I'm stuck in the past. The patcher portal is something that they're introducing, which is going to be a new standalone patcher for the game. Now,
which, if you're running the game through Steam, it doesn't affect you at all.
Yeah. This is one of the things I wanted to bring up. Is it kind of perplexes me that the game's on Steam, but they're still bringing out a new basically standalone launcher, which is fine. I have nothing against that, because I think still, like, last time I looked or inquired, like something like 30%, 35% people still use the patch, like the standalone, exclusively. So that's interesting, I think, in a way. But yeah, this new launcher portal should be definitely a lot interesting. Very interesting, I think. I wonder if they're going to do it kind of like War Thunder, where even though you launched through Steam, it still brings up the launcher portal.
I don't know. Something, again, we'll have to wait and see. I think one of the neat things that they are changing to include with this, though, is you don't have to have a separate download for public test server. Now you will be able to launch it from just one interface. which is very helpful for trying to get more people to participate. They don't have to.
Well, yeah, I was going to say a lot of people just didn't want to have to download another basically whole client.
Yeah, which, and to be fair, because of the intermittence of the public test server going up, sometimes when people wanted to participate in the public test, it was very hard because they load it up and they've got to download, so many of all those patches that have gone into the live game since the last time the public test server was up, which can be a long process, and especially if you're one of those that has to use the direct download of a patch recently because your connection isn't as fast or stable. Trying to do the public test server patching then was probably incredibly painful if you even bothered to continue after seeing that. So maybe this will help. Don't know. Hopefully it will. Always need more participants in the PTS. So here's hoping.
Yes, and again, I'm going to echo something here talking about PTS. Just rewards for participating. Just something like that to get people, instead of thinking, oh, I'm not going to bother with this because I'd rather spend my time actually grinding. Something for participation, I think, is still necessary.
Yeah.
Anyways.
A lot of, as we've said prior, a lot of companies game developers that do public testing, they almost always include, a reward of some sort for the people that participate in their public testing. That PGI doesn't is a little odd. I think that they should, but it's ultimately their decision.
So moving on to the next topic, something that launched recently, which I think is great. Actually, I think it launched yesterday, or no, 2 days ago. Anyways, the community page for MWO is now something that is been upgraded, and honestly, is probably one of the best things on the site right now.
Yes. If you want to try to find, any thing that might be related, such as the live Twitch streams, they will show up on the community page now when they go live. So much easier to, if you're not if you're just getting in and want to see what the game's like, that's going to help you find things. If you're an old hand and you just want to tune in and watch and see, what are people doing differently, very helpful there. Uh, Also helps to link a lot of the community events, the community content, that's been created, such as, art contests, homegrown tournaments. You've got all the community links from No Guts No Galaxy to Smurfy's Mech Lab to camo specs and mech specs to Rex Armory to Metamechs.
I was going to say the biggest one on there I think is Metamex. Having G-Man's site up there, I utilize that site so much.
Yeah. So there's a lot more being included there, and makes it a lot easier for people to find things if they are being told about it.
And not only that, having the live Twitch streams that are just one click away and you get to go to them is pretty sweet as well.
Yeah. So kudos for revamping the community page and actually making it a community page.
Yeah.
So
good job. Something that I think was needed for a long while.
So
let's talk about the roadmap. You all right with that?
Yeah. Looking ahead for February, pretty straightforward. We know the Supernova's coming. We've talked about it. It could be a really nasty inclusion to the game, or it could kind of be, meh. Again, we're not sure. We'll have to wait and see. The new skill tree's coming. We know it's coming in February. We're supposed to have a public test before it gets implemented. So maybe this coming week, this last couple, maybe the 31st of January or the 1st of February, we'll have an announcement about the public testing. Honestly, that the public test hasn't gone up yet when you're aiming for a February 21st patch date for inclusion makes me a little worried. Makes me concerned that the system hasn't been properly tested if you're getting that close to testing and then implementation. So maybe we won't get it in February. Maybe we'll get it in March. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. Faction play is supposed to be getting some UI improvements and some improvements just to the system overall. We don't have direct details about what those improvements are going to be. We're going to have to basically wait for a little bit more information in February. And finally, there's no February pre-order mech. You're going to have to wait till March when the new pre-orders go up for what's coming in the summer. So.
Yeah, and let's go looking ahead as well. You got these are stuff that don't really have a set deadline.
Yeah, encouraging game mode.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is stuff that they're working on right now, but they just don't have an actual deadline for. Accursion revamp, which is basically the old assault mode with some new stuff in it as well.
Well, it's going to be the version of assault now called incursion that we saw at MechCon.
Yeah,
where you're actually fighting over a base.
Yeah.
We don't.
There's also
again,
the
we don't
faction
know
play.
when that's going to get in.
Yeah. There's also the faction play and reward updates.
Yes.
Actually, while we're talking about this, we might as well talk a little bit about the town hall that happened as well yesterday. There's there's a couple things that was brought up that I want to touch upon, basically. Yeah. The biggest being the rewards, and there was something that Russ said that I want to reiterate here, was they were thinking about making loyalty points almost like a currency. And I think that is a very good move. Basically, he kind of mentioned it somewhat as people have already hit level 20 on certain factions and stuff like that, and there's no other rewards, but they're still incurring loyalty points. And one of the things brought up is, why don't we have the ability to, instead of just collecting loyalty points, why don't we spend them to get stuff? And Russ kind of mentioned that there was no actual confirmation, but the way it sounded like, the way Russ was talking, was that they're looking at possibly making those loyalty points more into a currency than, say, a collectible. And I think that would be a very, very, very good thing to do. It just all depends on what you could buy with those loyalty points, right? Like, if you collect 10,000 loyalty points or 20,000 loyalty points or something like that, what can you trade those in for?
Yeah. A couple other things that came up with it. A lot of the things about balance. So people kind of were happy about the inclusion of the quick play modes into faction play, but the consensus somewhat from the roundtable was that the implementation has not been as well received as initially planned. That people end up playing one mode for hours and never seem to advance or change modes, and that gets boring and old very quickly. Some people suggested maybe a randomization of the game mode, or maybe a voting system similar to what's involved with quick play. Still, not a lot. There seemed to be not a good consensus, at least from PGI's half, for those suggestions. The other thing that's been put up of factions needing perks, passive things like UAV lasting longer for one side, or drop spawns taking being faster or longer, but it still comes down to balance, and PGI is hesitant to agree to some of the suggestions, or really investigate some if they're worried really that it would affect balance of the game.
I do like the idea and concept of having spawn points that you can select. Like maybe there's 6 different ones, and then whoever's drop leader or whatever can select where people go. That said, I do understand where Russ was coming from when he said that the logistics to be able to do that is just not there at the
Yeah,
moment.
I do think that spawn points do need to be changed on on a number of the maps. They're either too close to a base or they're too far from a base, or where they're placed in the base. If you're the defender, are in odd positions now. Uh, the biggest problem I that comes to mind off the bat is Taiga. Uh, if you're the attacker, where the spawn points are placed right now is way too close to the gates, and basically allow you to rush the gates before the defenders are really even out of their spawn. So either so I think those need to be switched around a little bit. Uh, a couple other things that came up. One suggestion was that clans drop weight for their drop decks. 240. It seemed there was a big complaint that 240 is way too low, which I have to say, I disagree wholeheartedly about that, because at 240 you can still run 3 65 tonners and a 45 tonner, so you can run 3 Ebon Jaguars or 3 Hellbringers or any mix of that, and a Huntsman or a Shadowcat. So quit your whining. But to be a bit nicer and I guess a little bit more fair regarding it, uh, you can overall drop weight shouldn't affect you all that much in your playability. Especially if you're dropping as a group, you should be planning ahead of time. What you're taking, how you're going to use it. If you're not and you're losing, then there's your problem. So I do think clans, are okay with their drop weight right now, but the interesting issue that came up with this was someone suggested, hey, clans should be bidding their weight. That if you do, if you can accomplish your objective using less weight, you should get more rewards. Maybe more C-bills or more experience or more loyalty points for it. Uh, and that's a pretty interesting idea, and one that's been bandied about, since the inclusion of the clans and faction play. That yeah, clans should be, doing some sort of bidding, because that's one of their major traits. Uh, it was initially suggested that they shouldn't be dropping in a company; they should only be dropping in, a trinary, which was 15 and way too much, or a binary, which is 10 and might be a little too little for it. Uh, but you know, drop. Bidding doesn't have to be the number of units; it can be the weight of the units. So including your drop deck weight as part of a bid in order to try to get a bigger reward is an interesting concept and something that could be implemented. Uh, some people have suggested, well, you can't do that if you're an individual playing as a clanner. You could only do that if you're playing as a group. Well, no, not if you're doing it by individual drop deck. If you've going in, when you're configuring your drop deck and you don't use up all of your weight, it applies a bonus maybe to your potential rewards, much like how the cockpit item, some of the cockpit items included, bonus rewards to loyalty points originally. So I think there's potential there, and I would highly encourage PGI to develop the idea and explore it. Um, but it's ultimately up to them. Uh,
And there's a lot of talk as well as making factions unique and stand out between one another
yes.
as well. Perhaps giving certain factions exclusive quirks as long as you're sided with them. The issue, though, that Russ brought up, and I would have to agree, is that they can't. There has to be something aside from like weapon quirks or something like that
Yeah.
that they can do Because again, it's like Russ said, as soon as you put down cooldown quirks as one of the thing, or heat quirks or fire rate or anything like that, people are just going to flock to that faction.
Right.
But I do agree. I think there should be something unique or cool. Perhaps not something that's quote unquote meta. Like I think one brought up was that UAVs last a little longer, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe cooldown on artillery is a little a quicker or something like that. Like
Yeah, there are different suggestions for that.
But again, I see the issue with balance on it. If you give faster UAV cooldown or longer UAV time, I depending on how the meta is, you're going to see everyone jump on to that faction. It's I kind of agree with PGI that it could be more of a headache than it's worth, both in terms of implementation and then in terms of balancing. So I do have to agree though with one thing that they brought up from the community of inactive players skewing the contract bonuses. Uh, one of the examples that was brought up is that Davian's contract bonus is always low while Liao's is always high, and that doesn't actually reflect the players that are playing for those factions. Uh, and one of the suggestions was that tying it to the amount of players that have actually played for the faction in the last 30 days, or maybe for how many games have actually been played for that faction by players, and basing basing the contract bonus around that, which I have to say is actually kind of smart, because there are a lot of players in MechWarrior Online that sign up to a faction and never play faction play. They do it because they don't have an interest in playing faction play right now, but they identify themselves as a mercenary uh, or as a loyalist for one faction or the other, and it does affect everyone who is actually playing for that faction. Um, so it's something that I would strongly encourage PGI to look into. I don't think the contract bonuses are being properly reflective of how many players are actually playing per faction.
I think that's accurate as well. But again, much like we do, whatever has the high, I think a lot of players also flock to whoever has the highest payout.
But I think that's also partially for loyalists too, because if you're a
Yeah.
loyalist and you're playing all the time for your for your faction, and the contract bonus that you're getting, you can't change it, so you're stuck where you are, uh, and you're seeing it drop dramatically, even though there doesn't seem as many people playing for your faction. Yeah, that's kind of discouraging. It makes you not want to play for until things, hopefully even out. Uh, it was brought up though that in by PGI that in the next big release, probably April 4.2, that there is going to be a big change for the penalizing of people who have two different units in different factions that allow their players to seamlessly leave from one group to the other group and avoid contract penalties. They are going to start implementing a bigger penalty system, that when a player leaves a unit, they are still beholden to the unit's contract for at least 7 days, maybe more depending on the contract. Um, and this seemed to be actually well received in one of the a unit that is well known for doing this was actually called out and kind of disparaged for it. I kind of didn't agree with them calling out and doing that, because I believe that violates PGI's name and shame policy. But when you're doing it in the middle of a live roundtable, if you don't have a delay, you can't censor. So it happened, and it is what it is. But yeah,
Another thing, as far as like contracts and all that are concerned, they also brought up the quote unquote loophole of
Yes.
mercenaries and trying to close that loophole, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
yes,
For people who are not in the know, it's not really a loophole. It's that you could, if you sign on for like a week contract with a faction, you could cancel and then with 24 hours sign up on a new one.
yes,
And just basically, and again, I understand the reason why people were doing that, because for a while, I think for like 2 or 3 weeks, we were doing that as well. It was basically
we
to
weren't
cut
canceling.
down. No, but we were hopping around like crazy. But that's
Yeah, but
basically
we
because
would
in
do
order
the
to
entire contract first. We would do our
yes,
our week long contract and then maybe go somewhere else. And I don't think that's an issue. I think the issue is what you said initially of the
oh yeah,
loophole
the
of
cancellation.
cutting it early,
But
waiting the 24-hour period, and then immediately jumping it somewhere else.
yes, but we also have to dissect and understand the reason why people were doing that, and that's because of how the buckets were working at the time.
Yes.
So everyone take a drink. I said buckets. Basically, people were not able to find matches, sometimes waiting up to like 10, 15 minutes to get into a match, just based because of how split the population was. So in order to find matches, people would see what factions were getting the most action, cut contract, jump to those ones, play. Or that's quote unquote the reason why.
Yes. We also know from PGI that the new faction v faction sub wars are going to be starting up around April. The first one will be Liao versus Davian, much in reflection of the Forced Succession War. So, get your popcorn out for that one, or your Arby's dinner. I guess there's a big joke about Arby's with in regards to the Federated Sons or the Davians, due to some fan art from long ago. The couple other things were talked about loyalists possibly getting more tonnage to use in drops while mercs get less. There were a number of suggestions for increasing the differentiation between loyalists and mercenaries. Uh, One suggestion I've heard that wasn't mentioned, I believe it got mentioned in the chat but didn't get brought up, was including a repair and rearm penalty for faction play, and that if you're a loyalist, it's a less the penalty's less or non-existent, while mercenaries have to pay for it, and that you balance it out by loyalists don't have the repair and rearm penalty, but they earn less in terms of C-bills, while mercenaries make more on C-bills but have a repair and rearm cost to matches. And economically, that may require some serious thought, because if you've got a match where you just get steamrolled over, you might not have you might suffer a major C-bill loss. So I don't know how well it would work in this game, where we haven't had a
Conceptually,
repair and rearm
for
cost
a
since
long time.
since beta, and even then it was poorly. I don't want to say it was bad. I want to say it was poorly implemented. I think it could have worked if it had been more finely tuned. And I would say that if you're going to put in a repair and rearm cost, you need to start off slow and tweak it as you go, and maybe not initially put it into faction play, but put it across the board and tweak it from there. Which I don't know about that one. Some people say, that's not possible. They're always needing to scramble for C-bills, which I always kind of left scratching my head, because I don't understand when people say they don't have any C-bills anymore. Even if you're customizing your mechs constantly, you should always have at least 3 or 4 that you can just run and run well to make bank on. So, I don't know. But that was pretty much it, I think, from the roundtable last night.
Might have been a couple small
Yeah,
things here and there, but
I guess like one of the things I'll have to go back and see if my question got answered, but one of the things I asked, and one of the things I always look forward to, especially with this new update to the assault or the incursion game mode, will there be side objectives coming to community warfare and possibly rewards for both teams to either defend those side objectives or destroy those side objectives? Like, I think that'd be something that would be neat. And maybe add something special to community warfare, but that's down the line. That's wishful thinking still.
Yeah.
But I think that covers everything from the Christmas break right up till now.
Yeah. We do know that we're going to be getting improved spectator tools at some point. We're going to be getting improvements to the in-game chat system. There has been a request that in-game VoIP be included into the lobbies for faction play, so you can talk to people that aren't necessarily on your team and in your team speak while you're in the lobby. That could be very helpful, mainly because people tend to pay attention more to a voice in their ear than a little line of dialogue that pops up in a dialogue box on their screen. But that's been pretty much it for what's been announced between our last podcast and MechCon and what we've gotten in January so far.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. So we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, we'll have to see what February brings. Hopefully, we'll be getting an announcement about public test for the new skill system.
Again, something I'm looking forward to quite a bit more. And I think a lot of people are. I guess the only other thing, PGI, if any of you are listening, give us an update on what's going on with that heat thing. I know it wasn't overly successful and a lot of people were kind of not too pleased with it, but I'm wondering if you took that back to the drawing board and if you guys are working on it still. Or making changes, you know what I mean? So just even an update on what you're working on behind the scenes, even an acknowledgement that, hey, we tried this, didn't work out, so we're going to go back to the drawing board.
Yep.
Like, I think a lot of people would actually appreciate that. Of course, you're going to have your trolls and naysayers be like, haha, we told you so, blah, 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 but I think a lot more people would actually be pleased to say that, oh, you actually took the feedback that we gave you, and you're actually going forward with what happened, basically. Anyways, do you got any closing remarks, Tierkron?
No, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the Armored Combat Escalation Service podcast. Again, I'll probably be a little bit before the next podcast again, depends on what sort of information we get, but this is probably going to become more like a monthly thing, I would say, just because of we have one patch a month now instead of bi-weekly, and just everything like that. The amount of information we're given is a little bit more drawn out. They're developing more and releasing more in like larger dumps, so we can kind of talk about that. So I think we're going to be going more to like a monthly setup. But that being said, again, thank you everybody for listening, and until next time, Mech Warriors.